Good afternoon and welcome to the webinar, the LEED Project Series, Part 3, Analyzing Integrated Process, Sustainable Sites, and Location and Transportation. For those of you that are not familiar with 3R and our relationship with SRI, I'll give you a little background. In 1996, SRI began to incorporate environmental and CSR standards, including ISO 14001. By 2006, SRI started to incorporate its own internal CSR initiatives with the goal of improving the company and work environment for its employees. In 2008, SRI Green Building Certification was established to perform LEED project reviews for the U.S. Green Building Council and GBCI. After establishing a team with various backgrounds in sustainability and the built environment sectors and completing over 5,000 green building projects, 3R was spun off to provide consulting services in CSR and green buildings. I'm Carla Mitchell with 3R, and I've been a LEED accredited professional for 10 years. Throughout my career of more than 20 years, I've been part of design teams for multiple LEED certified buildings. For the past 8 years, I've been working as a LEED project reviewer and a consultant for SRI and 3R, overseeing a team of reviewers that have completed nearly 10,000 project phase reviews. This experience makes us uniquely qualified to have these discussions about LEED projects. So what are we going to talk about today? We will have a credit-specific discussion of the prerequisites and credits associated with integrated process, location and transportation, and the sustainable sites categories. We'll talk about the requirements for each prerequisite and credit. We'll then explain what the requirements mean. We'll touch on some of the associated costs with implementing the requirements. And finally, we'll highlight some of the important differences between version 3 and version 4 requirements. Today, we'll go through each of these 3 categories. We'll talk about the credit intent and what that really means to you when you want to attempt these credits. So our first category is integrative process. This is a new category under the V4 rating system, and there's only 1 credit in this category. However, if you are using the healthcare adaptation of the BD&C rating system, there's also 1 prerequisite, integrative process planning and design. However, under the BD&C new construction rating system, there are currently no prerequisites. So the intent of integrative process is to support high performance, cost-effective project outcomes through an early analysis of the interrelationships among systems. Now, what does that mean? It means beginning in the pre-design and throughout your design process, the project will take an integrative approach, which includes an early analysis of water and energy systems. That way you can figure out the synergies that naturally occur, and the project team can use that to optimize your building performance. So you may think this seems like project management, but it is a different way of looking at managing your project. This credit requires a collaborative process which starts before any design is started. The project team should be assembled at this point and include the energy modeler and commissioning agent, along with the architect and any engineers that would typically be involved at this phase. Your team should spend time setting the project's LEED goals and analyzing the options for the building design, including site, geometry, lighting, programming and operations, thermal comfort, and plug loads. Since this is a credit, attempting it is not required. However, something to keep in mind when considering this credit is that the strategies that are evaluated during the process are not required to be implemented in your project. While going through the integrative process for your project is good practice and can have positive results, there are some costs to consider. These are soft costs that would vary from project to project, but you can assume about 20 hours for preliminary energy modeling and studying of water systems. The analyzing of the microclimate of the project can take around 4 hours, and documenting the entire integrative process and the results can be up to about 10 to 15 hours. With that being said, it should be noted that while you may add hours to the upfront phase of your project, this process can save hours later in the design and construction phases. So the credits in the location and transportation category are LEED for neighborhood development, sensitive land protection, high priority site, surrounding density and diverse uses, access to quality transit, bicycle facilities, reduced parking footprint, and green vehicles. And one thing to note in this category is that there are no prerequisites. And all of those credits contribute to the intent of the LT category, which is to encourage project teams to take advantage of the infrastructure elements in existing communities that provide environmental and human health benefits. The first credit is LEED for neighborhood development location. The intent of this is to avoid development on inappropriate sites, to reduce vehicles, miles traveled, and to enhance the livability and improve human health by encouraging daily physical activity. Now, what this really means to you is that it's designed to encourage projects to locate in a LEED for ND certified site, and this is a big credit in terms of points if you can manage to achieve it. However, currently there are a limited number of LEED ND certified sites, so it's not going to be achievable for every project. One thing to note is that in the LT category, projects can either attempt LEED for neighborhood development location or the individual LT credits, but not both. The next one is sensitive land protection, and the intent of this is to avoid the development of environmentally sensitive lands and reduce the environmental impact from the location of a building on a site. So what this means is that you've got two options. You either locate the development footprint on land that has been previously developed, or you locate the development footprint on land that does not meet the criteria for sensitive land. And that criteria for sensitive land it includes prime farmland, floodplains, habitats, water bodies, and wetlands, and all of these are defined further in the LEED reference guide. And one thing to note about cost is that it's worth mentioning that for many of these LT and sustainable sites credits, there is no or low cost to achieve the points, but they do reflect the desire of the project team to utilize well-connected, reused sites, oftentimes in an urban corridor. And this is a result of the emphasis by USGBC to promote the continued reuse of existing buildings and sites that are already tied into the infrastructure grid. High priority site is the next credit, and the intent is to encourage project location in areas with developmental constraints and promote the health of the surrounding area. So high priority sites are considered as option 1, a historic district, option 2, priority designation, or option 3, brownfield remediation. So what do these things mean? This means the credit is designed to reward your project for building in a high priority site instead of environmentally sensitive sites like greenfields. Option 1 prioritizes projects that use the infill of historic districts, and that needs to be a designated historic district. Option 2 encourages high priority redevelopment zones, and option 3 encourages the project teams to remediate areas where the soil or groundwater contamination has been identified to reclaim previously unusable land. That would be sites like old mills, anywhere that there has been oftentimes underground gas containment, those types of things. So there are costs associated with high priority sites, and for options 1 and 2, this is going to vary based on the site, but by selecting a site that matches the criteria for either option 1 or 2, you're going to be enabling a more synergistic design related to other sustainable design strategies. And sites in these zones are often available for economic incentives, which will make them even more attractive to developers. And option 3, depending on the amount of contamination, the cost for soil removal and remediation can be significant. But it's important to note that contaminated sites often sell for much, much less than a greenfield site. The next credit is surrounding density and diverse uses. And the intent of this is to conserve land and protect farmland and wildlife habitat by encouraging development in areas with existing infrastructure, to promote walkability and transportation efficiency and reduce vehicle distance traveled. Also to improve public health by encouraging daily physical activity. And basically there is no cost to this. If you locate your site, it's very easy credit to document if you pick the site appropriately. Now, there's two options for this. There's option 1, which is surrounding density, which means you're going to locate on a site where the existing density within a quarter-mile radius of the project boundary meets the following criteria in the table shown below. And option 2 goes into diverse uses. So you're going to locate your project in a building or space that's within the building's main entrance is within a half-mile walking distance to the main entrance of 4 to 7 or 8 or more existing and publicly available diverse uses. Depending on the number of diverse uses nearby, determines the number of points that you can achieve. The next credit is access to quality transit. And the intent of this credit is to encourage development in locations shown to have multimodal transportation choices or otherwise reduce motor vehicle use, thereby reducing greenhouse gas emissions, air pollution, and other environmental and public health harms associated with motor vehicle use. Now, new in version 4, there are requirements added regarding transit frequency for both weekdays and weekends, and there are now added modes of transportation that can be included, including ferries, streetcars, bus rapid transit, and rideshare. Next credit is bicycle facilities. The intent of this is to promote bicycling and transportation efficiency and reduce vehicle distance traveled, to improve public health by encouraging utilitarian and recreational physical activity. And this credit was much different in version 3, but now in version 4, you must provide both short-term and long-term storage for bikes. And the most important thing is that projects must locate within a bicycle network, which is bike paths or lanes that connect within 3 miles of bicycling distance to at least 10 diverse uses or transit stop. Many cities already have bicycle networks in place, but this can also be achieved in projects located outside of big cities. So there's two options, and case 1 is for commercial projects, and LEED version 4 requires 2.5% coverage for short-term bike parking, in addition to 5% coverage for regular building occupants with long-term parking. In addition, you have to designate 4 spaces on all projects at a minimum, and showers remain the same as version 3 with 0.5% of the FTEs, and then you must provide an additional shower per each 150 building occupants. Case 2 applies to residential projects, and version 4 now requires 2.5% coverage for short-term bike parking, in addition to 30% coverage for regular building occupants for long-term parking, with a minimum of 4 short-term spaces and 1 long-term space. This is very different to version 3 because version 3 only required 15% coverage. The next credit is reduced parking footprint. And the intent of this is to minimize the environmental harms associated with parking facilities, including automobile dependence, land consumption, and rainwater runoff. And what that really means is that your designated parking capacity can't exceed your minimum local zoning. And if you are providing parking, at least 5% of those spaces must be reserved as preferred parking for carpools. And the total parking capacity will be a percentage reduction below the base ratios recommended by the Parking Consultants Council. The next one is green vehicles. The intent of this is to reduce pollution by promoting alternatives to conventionally fueled automobiles. Now, what that means to you is that it's now green vehicles instead of just low-emitting and fuel-efficient vehicles, as it was in version 3. And in addition to preferred parking for green vehicles, projects also have to install alternative fueling stations to earn the points. And those alternative fueling stations can be electric vehicle charging stations, liquid or gas fueling stations, battery switching station capable of servicing multiple vehicles each day. Now, there's costs associated with this one for green vehicles. Typically, you're going to require signage, which can be approximately $250 to $500 per space. Electric vehicle charging stations can run you about $2,500 to $4,000 per station. And Of course, if you decide to go with liquefied petroleum fueling, then that's going to vary based on the size of the station that you're going to put in. Next, we're going to go into sustainable sites category. And the credits in this category are construction activity pollution prevention, which is a prerequisite, site assessment, site development, protect or restore habitat, open space, rainwater management, heat island reduction, and light pollution reduction. Now, the intent of this category is to reward decisions about the environment surrounding the building, with credits that emphasize the vital relationships among buildings, ecosystems, and ecosystem services. It focuses on restoring project site elements, integrating the site with local and regional ecosystems, and preserving the biodiversity that natural systems rely on. So the prerequisite in the sustainable sites category is construction activity pollution prevention. The intent of this is to reduce pollution from construction activities by controlling soil erosion, waterway sedimentation, and airborne dust. Now, meeting this requirement is standard practice for most rural and urban areas within the U.S., where the EPA Construction General Permit, or CGP, is adopted at the regional level. Regulations do often require compliance with the EPA requirements, so most projects are already implementing these requirements. First credit is site assessment. The intent of this is to assess site conditions before design, to evaluate sustainable options, and inform related decisions about site design. Now, this is new in V4, and site assessment is adapted from a prerequisite in the Sustainable Sites Initiative, or the Sites Rating System. You must complete a survey that documents the relationships between the site features and how these synergies can be used to develop project goals based on overlapping areas of concern. The site assessment must document the site features listed below and how they influenced your project design. Now, if they're not applicable, the project team must give the reasons for not addressing these topics. You see the topics here, they hit on typography, hydrology, climate, vegetation, soils, human use, and human health effect. Next credit is site development, protect or restore habitat. The intent of this credit is to conserve existing natural areas and restore damaged areas to provide habitat and promote biodiversity. Now, this is new in version 4, and any project can pursue this credit, even those without on-site vegetation. Projects that do have vegetation can earn 2 points. Project without can pursue a financial option and max out at 1 point. So those two options are option 1, which is on-site restoration. For previously developed areas of the site, 30% of that must be restored with consideration to soils, hydrology, and native plants. Option 2 is for sites without vegetation. Those projects can purchase site offsets by donating 40 cents a square foot of the entire site area to a recognized land trust or conservation organization accredited by the Land Trust Alliance. So, for example, if your site area is 50,000 square feet at 40 cents a square foot, your donation will be $20,000. Next credit is site development open space. The intent of this is to create exterior open space that encourages interaction with the environment, social interaction, passive recreation, and physical activities. Now, the requirements for this are to provide outdoor space, which is greater than or equal to 30% of the total site area, which includes your building footprint. A minimum of 25% of that outdoor space must be vegetated, and turf grass does not count as vegetation in this case. Or you can have overhead vegetated canopy. So the cost for this, oftentimes rural or campus sites with existing open space will have an easier time obtaining these credits, sometimes with no added effort. For urban sites, credit compliance may need to include high-cost strategies like vegetated roofs. And there are some synergies with attempting this credit, because you're going to, if you attempt heat island reduction or rainwater management systems, there's oftentimes things that will coincide between this and those credits. So site development, rainwater management. The intent of this is to reduce runoff volume and improve water quality by replicating the natural hydrology and water balance of the site based on historical conditions and undeveloped ecosystems in the region. In version 4, this credit has combined stormwater quality and quantity control, whereas they were separate under version 3, and has added site-specific aspects for smaller, more frequent storm events. The project team will need to ensure that rainwater management strategies keep rainwater on the site. And in version 3, a green roof or rain garden that drains to a municipal storm sewer, which is commonly happens in many projects, will no longer meet the credit requirements. So site development heat island reduction is the next credit. The intent of this is to minimize the effects on microclimates and human and wildlife habitats by reducing heat islands. The requirements are to utilize reflected materials for your roof and hardscape. You can also provide parking under cover. Shade trees and vegetated roofs also contribute to your credit compliance. And one thing to note is that your typical gray concrete no longer meets the credit requirements. Its typical SR value is 0.26, which is less than the credit threshold of 0.33 at installation. And new items in version 4 is that this credit combines the roof and non-roof credits from version 3. So now USGBC determines credit compliance for non-roof hardscape using SR values instead of SRI values. And they also now calculate the shade area from tree canopy after 10 years of landscape installation rather than 5 years. And LEED has also increased the initial SRI thresholds for roofing materials, and it now factors in the 3-year aged SRI values for roofing materials. The next one is site development, light pollution reduction. The intent of this is to increase night sky access, improve nighttime visibility, and reduce the consequences of development for wildlife and people. And you must provide uplight and trespass requirements using either the backlight uplight glare or the bug method, which is your option 1, or the calculation method, which is option 2. So in option 1, bug is a prescriptive method that based on evaluating the backlight, uplight, and glare for your exterior lighting fixtures. Bug tested lights are available for purchase, and while there aren't a lot of lights right now, the lighting market is starting to catch up, and there will be more fixtures available in the near future. Option 2, for some projects it's easier to achieve compliance with calculation method. Eligible technologies can be full cutoff luminaires, low reflectance surfaces, or low angle spotlights. And this option also allows for light trespass to the center of the street under specific circumstances. So the credits that we discussed today can contribute up to 27 points towards your LEED certification. With upfront thought and planning, maximizing your points in these categories has the potential to make up a significant number of the total available points for your project. And we've talked exclusively about LEED today, but there are other rating systems as well, which pursue different goals, like the Living Building Challenge, WELL, Passive House, and BREEAM. And while their end goals may be different, using any of these rating systems will serve to document and confirm your building sustainability pursuits. Every project is different, and while LEED can accommodate most project types, it doesn't fit every project. You may be interested in pursuing a different rating system. If that's the case, give me a call and I'd be happy to help you talk about your particular situation and which rating system is right for you. SRI and 3R have the experience with the process and the skills needed to help companies be successful in the pursuit of their sustainability goals. And if you're not considering certification but want to design or improve your building to get maximum benefit, we can help you with that too. Although I must say there is a lot of brand value to be realized from having that LEED plaque and what it stands for, so I would highly encourage you to consider certification, if at all possible. When you're pursuing LEED certification, you can call us to help. At the very least, make sure you involve someone who can look at your situation and provide a realistic assessment of how you should pursue your LEED certification. With the right partners on your team, LEED certification can be easy and beneficial, both for your financial and environmental commitments. And of course, if we can help in any other way, we've listed some of our other 3R, CSR, and Built Environment Services here. Thank you for attending the LEED Project Series Part 3, Analyzing Integrated Process, Sustainable Sites, and Location of Transportation. And please look for the rest of the series, available in coming weeks, where we will dive into the details of the remaining LEED credit categories.